Welcome to the Your World Within podcast. I'm Eddie Pinero, and today's episode is going to be about focus. So many of us struggle with clarity in a world moving so fast with so many options and distractions and shiny objects. We have a hard time, one, identifying what matters, and two, holding on to it. So I'm going to talk about focus today. First, in a broad sense, and then dial in some specific stories and examples. First and foremost, focus is subtle. It isn't loud. It doesn't scream for your attention. It waits quietly in the corner behind all the noise. It's not that it's hard to find. It's that often we stop looking. We stop asking what really matters and start chasing everything that doesn't. Just like cleaning a fogged up mirror, you already have the reflection. You just have to remove the steam. Focus begins when you stop answering to the chaos. When you realize you don't need to do more, you need to do less, better. You need to slow down, look inward, ask different questions. Because something I've come to learn is that most of us aren't burnt out from effort. We're burnt out from distraction. From being pulled in directions we never choose by people we don't even know, towards outcomes we don't even want. So breathe. Let this be your return to stillness, to vision, to that fire you've buried under deadlines and to-do lists and opinions. There's nothing wrong with ambition. But ambition without clarity is like running blindfolded, right? Fast, but in circles. Well, it's focus that turns that motion into progress. That's what turns effort into transformation, and it starts with asking, what truly matters in my life? What is non-negotiable? What am I here to build, to become, to leave behind? Once you find that, you let go of the rest. Because here's a simple truth. There will always be more you could do, but that doesn't mean that you should. You don't need to prove to yourself, to people who wouldn't notice you if you disappeared tomorrow. You don't need to impress strangers. You don't need to say yes just to be liked. You need to protect the path. Guard your time like it's your life, because guess what? It is. Every scroll, every tab, every yes, every concession, every open loop steals from your future. We talk about legacy like it's some distant thing. But legacy is built right now. In this decision, this hour, this breath. What you focus on today writes the story they tell tomorrow. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. And it's not a sprint, it's a return, a rhythm, one breath, one task, one yes at a time. There's nothing sexy about mastery. It's not flashy. It's the person in the corner showing up when no one's watching, choosing the work again and again, that focus. That's how greatness is built, in the quiet. In the things that you walk away from, unannounced, unproclaimed, only to make room for the things that matter most. There's an old Cherokee parable. When I first got into personal development, really understanding how to take control of my life, to highlight the things that lit me up and move towards those things that energized and invigorated me, this really echoed in my head. So let's start here. A grandfather is sitting with his grandson. And the boy's angry. He's confused about things happening in his life. Grandfather decides, he kind of takes it upon himself to sit with the boy and help him find the light, we'll say. So he sits down next to his grandson, says, I'm going to tell you a story. There are two wolves inside all of us, always fighting. One is fear, doubt, comparison, and chaos. The other is clarity, strength, focus, and love. The grandson takes it in, thinks about it for a moment, and asks, well, Grandpa, which one wins? The old man replies, the one you feed. And really, that's what focus is. It's feeding the right wolf. It's deciding what voice gets your energy, what path gets your time, what thought gets to grow. You don't get to silence all the noise. We're human. But you do get to choose which signal becomes your soundtrack. In every moment, you are either feeding fear or feeding your future. See, focus isn't about having no distractions. Again, that's a fool's errand. What it is having the discipline to return, to choose, to show up, to begin again. Because the strongest minds didn't silence the world, they strengthened their intention. So let's go a little bit deeper now. Let's talk about building from this space. Focus is the soil where vision becomes reality. Think about it like this. You don't plant a seed and expect a tree the next day. You water it. You shield it. You wait. And you trust. Goals and dreams are no different. They take time and they take, you guessed it, focus, intentionality. Not the kind of focus that burns out, not hustle until I collapse, but the kind that whispers the gentle reminder, one more rep, one more day. It may be uncomfortable, but it's supposed to, so stay with it. There's a misconception that discipline is what drains you. But discipline doesn't drain you. Distraction does. Dissonance between what you want and what you're doing drains you. Every time you stop and restart, you lose rhythm, and rhythm is how flow is born. So protect that. Protect your mornings. Protect your deep work. Protect your peace. If that world out there can take your focus, it can and it will take your future. Robin Sharma has a quote. He says, you can be distracted or you can do incredible things, but you can't do both. So let's start by honoring your boundaries. Realize it's okay to say no to the things that don't belong. Instead, start looking for the little sparks, the flickers of momentum that will light that fire in your soul. It was so freeing to understand that not everything deserves your response, right? Not every comment deserves your energy. Not every opportunity is worth your attention. And I think that's it. In a nutshell, the difference between movement and momentum, between busy and becoming. Feed the good wolf. That in itself requires intentionality, because it also encompasses the awareness to push away the bad wolf, the negativity, the things that prevent the seed from growing. This next example refers to a phrase that says, "What you water grows." Every day, there's a specific decision you have to make. This is the most practical truth. Two voices speaking, one says you can, the other says you are not enough. One whispers, keep going, the other tempts you to quit. One builds, one breaks. And the thing is, neither wins by default. They win based upon the attention you give them. Their success is again predicated upon your focus. It's like watering two plants. Every thought, every click, every choice is water, and which one are you going to nourish? What are you going to give attention to? You can't expect peace when you feed chaos. You can't expect courage when you fuel doubt. Focus is your diet, and what you consume becomes who you are. It's like tuning a radio. There's always static, always chaos, but there's also a signal. There's a frequency of truth, of clarity waiting to be found. It's what dials down the noise. It's what says, I know the fear is loud, but I choose progress anyway. And I know the distractions are fun, but I choose purpose. Because oftentimes the good voice, it's quieter. It doesn't yell for your attention, it waits. So today, choose what lifts. Choose what aligns. Choose what reminds you who you are and what you're building. You're not just working. You're tuning the signal in your life. You're shaping the story of your future. And the story you feed, you water, becomes the life you live. You're the author. Don't forget, you are the author. Not the audience, not the critics. You choose the storyline with the tone and the pacing, the way the hero bends, breaks, and rises again. That's on you. And I get it. It's hard to keep that in mind in a world full of voices, of decisions, in a lot of ways, of compliance. Everyone watching, judging, everyone telling you where the plot should go. But here's the truth. They do not hold the pen. You do. It's like trying to write in a loud room. People shouting, screens flashing, noise coming from every direction. But the only thing that matters is what gets written on the page. Can you hold the pen steady? Can you write your truth even when no one claps? Even when the pages are messy? Because that's where the real story lives. Not in the comments, not in the applause, not in the fear of how it will end. It lives in the choice to keep creating. Of course, it would be easier to follow someone else's script. But that's not much of a life, is it? The idea is like standing on stage with the lights in your eyes. If you start looking around for approval, you forget your lines. The spotlight is yours, not to impress, but to express. To remind yourself and maybe the world that this chapter is not finished. That this character is still becoming. That the best parts are still unwritten. And your job, your only job, is to write boldly. Rewrite if you have to. But don't hand over the pen. Not to anyone. Ever. It's your superpower. It's your strength. It's your story. You're not here to be understood. You're here to understand yourself and to build something so true that even the critics go quiet. It was not about them. It was never about them. It's about where you go from here. Chasing fireflies. I spent some time in Roanoke, Virginia. One of the most beautiful places I've ever lived. It's a little valley surrounded by the Blue Ridge Mountains. And across the street from my apartment at the time was a park you could look over in the evening and you'd see hundreds of fireflies flying around. And I always thought it was such a cool thing. You know, it brings back when I was really young, when I was a kid, and it was such a thrill running around trying to chase those things. And seeing this day in and day out led me to think, 20-something years later, about all the things that have changed in my life. Because back then, life was pretty straightforward. As a child, you place your value on what feels right in the present. You're not thinking about 2 years down the road or wondering what others are going to think. Your creativity and your sense of exploration are running on all cylinders. Then something happens, right? We begin to understand the way of things. We see what's valued in society. We see what's expected. We see how success is defined. And then, so begins our ascent up the ladder. And rung by rung we climb, looking above us to see where others are, see how fast they move in relation to us. Which eventually this coincides with how we see ourselves. And as you know, how you see yourself is the best indicator of what you will become. Which is why when so many people aren't happy with their day-to-day, it's a huge red flag. That's breathing. That's not living. Folks have been climbing this ladder their entire lives and never stopped to ask if it's where they were meant to be. Maybe the top of this community ladder isn't what you want. But you never thought, you only acted. And if you don't think, if you don't ask yourself the question, you will climb, and you will climb, and you will climb. That is, until you burn out. I try and spend a few minutes every day thinking about this. After all, it's the most important thing I can spend time on. It's my life. It's more important than green paper. It means more than the opinions of others. It's the backbone of everything. Everything around me and the meaning I give it stems from how I identify myself. Who I am. Which brings me back to those fireflies. To running around on a hot summer evening, not having a care in the world. There's something intrinsically perfect about those moments. Life is about peak experiences, joy, excitement, so that you never lose that spark. Because the way I see it, that energy is all that separates us from every other being on the planet. If we don't have that, what do we have? What separates us from ants moving dirt? It's just monotonous action based on instinct. There's no thrill in that. Why not create a life that allows you to feel that excitement every day? Don't act because you were supposed to. Act because you so desperately want to that there's no other option. Because you couldn't live without the adventure. You couldn't pass on the experience. Here's a secret. If you become fixated on a life that means nothing to you, at some point you will look around and that is exactly what you will see. A beautiful view of everything you do not want. So maybe there is something to the whole chasing firefly routine. Maybe, just maybe, a 4-year-old running after a glowing bug with a jar deserves more credit than he's given. Great progress is often the result of subtle change. Seeing something just a little bit differently than you did just a moment before. It's not that the world around you's changed. It's that your thoughts about it have. It's that you looked hard enough to see the opportunity when most simply walked by it. See, people live in this place called reality, this little plot of land surrounded by a fence that separates them from the imaginary, the impossible, and the make-believe. But what if? What if you took a second to stop, to look out at the unknown? What if every day you pushed that fence back, little by little, watching what used to be imaginary become your new reality? Soon you'd look around and you'd wonder why a boundary ever existed at all. Almost as though no word is as deceitful as impossible. Impossible is as temporary as a falling raindrop. It's a bar that's constantly moving, and as goes your mind, so does the world around you. When that intersection of real and imaginary blend together, possibilities multiply. Limitations crumble and fall, and failure is no longer an endpoint. It becomes an invitation to begin again. Two things define your world: your perception of it and how you act on that perception. So never ask yourself if something can be done. The question is how. It's how. How are you going to do it? How are you going to make yourself believe it can happen? Look, we were never taught to see the opportunity in everything. We were taught to be practical, to listen, to follow orders, to accept what is. But it's the unknowns that point us in the direction of what we want most. They're not conventional. But then again, neither were airplanes, spaceships, or driverless cars not that long ago. Your goal is not just to live. It's to live a life without walls. A life where you are that author and your story can be shared with the world. One day it will all make sense. As one Steve Jobs said during a Stanford commencement speech, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. Your job isn't to know, but to trust that someday you will. It's to have the courage to paint in real time a portrait that will be ever evolving. It's the strength to be wrong, the resolve to rise to your feet time and time again. Because one day it will all make sense. And you'll see. You'll see that the roundabout, often confusing, unpredictable road you walked was the road you had to take. It made you who you are. Never forget who you wanted to be. We were sitting outside on the patio when a friend of mine said to me, "People think they need to go wide, but they're wrong. It's going deep that matters. We celebrate depth. We want to be around deep people. They're the ones who change things. And so-called deep people aren't deep because they're born that way. Deep people are deep because they find a world to call their own and lose themselves in it. Depth is creating your own kingdom and picking up the crown at your feet. And hearing that, sitting with that idea, in all honesty, it hurt. It hurt because I knew that I'd sacrificed depth in order to chase more. More of what doesn't matter. More of what isn't me. More of what might make other people happy. What does that create? Well, surprise, you now get to be mediocre at a ton of things you don't care about. Forget all that. Leave it. Leave it because the clock is ticking. Leave it because you can spend a lifetime chasing distant galaxies and orbiting around someone else's moon. Leave it because you can blink and realize you built your entire world in their image. But what if I were to remind you, you are made of dust from stars? That's right. The same chemical makeup that once lit up the night sky. My friend, the universe is already inside you. It's just that this one needs permission to expand. This one needs you to stop asking the world for directions and understand you are already home. The thing is, you know what's required of you. Just like I knew looking at my friend as he uttered those words. Two things. One, stop playing other people's games. And two, go all in on your own. Find your arena and light up this stage. I mean, imagine if you went deeper on that thing that set your soul ablaze. Imagine if you knocked on the door to your own personal infinity. What might live on the other side? Because it's easy to go wide, to dabble in many things or everything. But the courage. Oh, the courage to go all in on your thing. The courage to admit, yeah, that path over there, it works. But it doesn't work for me, and therefore I guess it doesn't work at all, does it? Your greatness is directly correlated to your willingness to buy into you. To not float on the surface, but to submerge to its depths. Explore that place that so many aren't willing to go. That place you, just a few minutes ago, weren't willing to go. But now is a new day. A new starting point to go not wide but deep. Depth is the only thing that will simultaneously save your soul and allow you to gift it to the world. So down, down, down. Down to the part of you waiting to reemerge. to light up the night sky once again. Down, down, down. To the place where the internal universe connects to the external. Down, down, down. I'll meet you there. I'm going to defer back to the quote from Robin Sharma that states, you can allow yourself to be distracted or you can do incredible things, but you can't do both. You can stay where the safety and security is, or you can risk what you have in pursuit of your dreams, but you can't do both. You can remain the character depicted in yesterday's story, or you can take those lessons, experiences, and craft a new story, but you cannot do both. Life is a game of trade-offs, where any decision to go in one direction is a simultaneous decision to not go in another. A commitment to X is necessarily a rejection of Y, at least in that moment. Making this question all the more important: what is your North Star? And I ask because everything you do is bringing you closer to or holding you back from capturing it. One of my lifelines over the years has been clinging to the quote or idea that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? Consistently trying to arrive at that place. Why? Well, because when things get complex in my life, I don't know what I'm choosing. Clutter means I've lost sight of what's necessary versus what's trivial. I become unclear on those critical trade-offs I'm making. And, we've all experienced this, right? The simple questions are always the hardest to answer. We can talk in circles about the details. But how often are we honest with ourselves about the why? I remember job interviews in college, going on and on about the books I read, the papers I'd written, current events, but then falling flat on my face when asked, okay, so who's Eddie Pinero? A dude doing an interview? Like, what do you want from me? My brain had really never gone there. Or even less formal, right? I'll never forget a friend of mine a few years back asked me what my perfect day was, just casually as we're driving. I said, I don't know. Never really thought about that. And he goes, okay. Well, then how are you ever supposed to have a perfect day if you don't know? And how simple. Simple and simultaneously incredible. Who wants a life without perfect days? Like, what is all this for? The world is finite. And you can be ruled by its variability and its complexity. You can run around adhering to all its rules, hoping you're doing the right thing, whatever that is. Or you can identify, carve out, and rule over your own little piece of it, your own kingdom. But first, take the time to uncover who you are, what lights you up, and then, as Emerson advocates, hitch your wagon to that star.